Mao Zedong is one of the most impactful leaders in the last 100 years. He had an important role in the Chinese Revolution and founded the People's Republic of China. To the citizens in China during his reign, he presented a godlike image.
Our group chose Mao because of the impact that he's had on Chinese society, both good and bad, as well as the vast difference in perspective held by people throughout the world. This controversy allows us to examine Mao as a leader and determine his strengths as well as his shortfalls.
He was born in a farm village called Shaoshan, China in 1893. His father, Mao Yichang, was one of the wealthiest farmers in Shaoshan.
Mao Zedong attended primary school in his home village of Shaoshan. It was there that he was first introduced to Confucius morals. Mao was a good student and showed a lot of future promise.
At the age of 13, Mao left his family to attend secondary school in Changsha. The Xinhai Revolution broke out when Mao was only 18, and he joined the battle as a rebel soldier. The Chinese Republic was born from the uprising, and Mao's brief 6-month military stint was over.
After the revolution, Mao went on to attend Peking University in 1918. Mao was noted as being a diligent and hardworking student. He possessed passion and drive unequal to that of his classmates.
It was at the university where Mao met two of the future leaders of the Communist Party, Li Dazuo and Chen Duxiu. These two prominent figures helped him climb the ladder of the communist regime. One of Mao's influences was Karl Marx, a German philosopher who created Marxism. He taught about a socialist economic system. He thought that capitalism caused unequal social classes and internal tension. He wanted the working class to revolt and for resources to be shared equally. Vladimir Lenin also influenced Mao. Lenin was a Russian revolutionary communist. He was head of the Soviet Union. He led a revolution in Russia to overthrow the provisional government that had been created. Lenin formed a socialist ideal that swept through Russia and through its people.
Mao attended the first Congress of the Chinese Communist Party in 1921. It was here that Mao forged the idea that would change the history of China. Mao formed an alliance with the Nationalist Party and let the Congress feeling empowered.
Mao returned to his village after the Congress to organize the peasants of Hunan. He led a revolt of the peasant farmers against the current Chinese regime. Chiang Kai-shek turned against Mao and the peasants and struck down on the revolution. The remaining peasants fled into the Jinggang Mountains. Mao and his peasant followers joined the Communist Red Army after retreating into the mountains. The new coalition developed guerrilla warfare tactics with the commander Zhu Di. The Red Army trained for 3 years in their camp until finally facing the elite Chinese nationalist troops. They were no match for the superior nationalist army and were forced to retreat into northwest China in October of 1934. This would be known as the Long March. The march lasted 370 days and covered 6,000 miles of dense, rocky, and mountainous terrain. 90,000 troops started the march, but only about 10,000 would survive to see the end of it. In 1973, catastrophe struck China. Japan invaded the already struggling country. This forced Chiang Kai-shek to request the help of the Communist Chinese Army. This was the opportunity Mao was looking for, to assert himself as a prominent military leader and prove to China and its people that he is capable of leading. The battle for China commenced, and the outcome would change the course of history. After defeating the Japanese in the war, Mao then looked to take over all of China. He announced the establishment of the People's Republic for China in Tiananmen Square, and announced himself as the chairman.
人民共和国中央人民政府今天成立了。
Mao began to implement new campaigns and reforms as the leader of China. A major change he made was the land reform, which forcibly took land from rural Chinese landlords and gave them to poor peasants. This reform encouraged people to overthrow and even murder their own landlords. It is estimated that about 2 million people died due to land reforms that Mao enacted. Under the first 5 years of communist control in China, China's economy seemed to prosper due to Reconstruction. Mao saw this vast improvement in the country and used it to implement the Great Leap Forward. The Great Leap Forward was Mao's way to renovate China into a modern communistic country. He wanted to build an economy to rival America's. Mao would modernize China through industrialization, agriculture, and collectivization of land. Millions of people were organized into communes so that industry and agriculture would grow at the same rate. The Great Leap Forward ultimately backfired and caused the Great Chinese Famine, an overproduction of poor quality goods. It is estimated that 45 million people could have died from the Great Famine. This was a greater genocide than Hitler or Stalin. Mao was the reason behind the Great Leap Forward and therefore was forced to resign as the head of state, but he still remained chairman of the Communist Party.
In response to the failed Great Leap Forward and to try and regain authority over China, Mao launched the Cultural Revolution. He believed that China and the current communist leaders were headed in the wrong direction. He wanted to create a countrywide equality amongst classes. He thought that an inequality had been formed and tried to stop it through violent class struggles that would remove the people that Mao felt were disobeying him. Chinese students responded by forming Red Guard groups that would turn violent. Red Guard groups would torture and kill their so-called class enemies. About 1 million people died in the violent culture reform, and many Chinese artifacts were destroyed. There was an overall decline in the country.
On September 9, 1976, Mao Zedong died due to health-related problems such as Parkinson's disease at the age of 82. This communist leader and founder of the People's Republic of China did not disappear into the shadows, and his legacy will live on for centuries to come. legacy is controversial to historians. The people of China considered him a great leader, a political strategist, and a military mastermind. On the other hand, people view him as the cause of mass genocide and stunting China's growth at times.